Generation Z has had enough of gun violence. Will a group of angry kids be stronger than the NRA? Plus, we've got Russian trolls and new indictments in Robert Mueller's investigation. And it's only Thursday. I'm Jonathan Capehart with opinion writers Molly Roberts, Joanne Armeo, and Christine Emba. As always, send us your comments and questions, and we'll try to bring them in. Not try, we will, because Molly's very good about pushing in your comments into the conversation. Let's take a look at one of the things that was said by one of the many, many unbelievably articulate students from Parkland, Florida.
My friend will never get to say I graduated high school. He's never gonna get a high school diploma. He's never gonna get a first official job. He's never gonna tell his girlfriend Victoria, I love you again. How can you just live like that? How can you, like, as a president of the United States of America, how can you look at these fellow students and think, okay, it's life, let's just move on? No, my life is forever stopped.
As you saw, grief has turned to anger for the survivors of the deadly Parkland, Florida school shooting. We've seen more organizing power in the past week than in several years combined. Here's another Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School student, Justin Gruber, at a White House listening session Tuesday.
I'm only 15 years old. I'm a sophomore. 19 years ago, the first school shooting at Columbine High School happened, and I was born into a world where I never got to experience safety and peace. There needs to be a significant change in this country because this has to never happen again. And people should be able to feel that when they go to school, they can be safe.
Okay, we have to talk about the power of Generation Z. From the first clip that we saw to young Mr. Gruber there, these kids are not having it at all.
No,
No, they're not. And I think we saw everyone kind of looks at Sandy Hook as an example of maybe how defeated we should feel. We thought this is the perfect group of people to send this message to the parents of these children who were killed, and still nothing happened. But now we have the children who are in this school, and they are children. They have that innocence and that moral authority that comes with it, but also they're old enough to be articulate, and they're old enough to take the stage, and they're the perfect generation to know how to harness the power of social media.
And that is a great point.
Well,
Joanne.
I hope you're right. I really hope you're right. But it's enough of a cynic in me to think that we should not underestimate the insensitivity, the obtuseness of our political leaders, and the cravenness of the NRA, which we've had a couple of examples of recently about that.
Yeah, I think Molly makes a great point about how well prepared this particular generation is to know how to kind of be open, be in the public, talk clearly, and make clear points that are going to be heard everywhere. I was actually tweeting after I watched the CNN town hall yesterday night, which was fascinating, about how articulate these kids were and how they knew exactly how to talk to the crowd and get their points across. And someone else responded, you know, it's hilarious that the NRA and lawmakers think that these teens are just going to fold in front of them. Like, these are teenagers of the millennial generation. They've been brought up on, you know, like bullying, social media, and dry cereal. Like, they know what to do. Right. They know exactly what to do. And one of the things that's so interesting is how seemingly enraged and almost terrified the NRA and anti-gun control conservatives seem to be about these teens making their voices heard. They call them crisis actors. They imply that they're somehow weaponizing their victimization. And that, I think, speaks to their power. The one thing about these kids is that they are kids, so when you try to sort of vilify them or make them out to be actors, it doesn't work because they're children, and that's kind of always been the right's go-to move for tearing down this discussion. They're the most sympathetic victims possible, and they are victims, and we have to listen to them.
Right. The other thing, to jump off your point, Christine, we have to remember that this is also, you said social media, but let's put a finer point on it. This is the generation that grew up not knowing a world without Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. they are used to being on camera with their selfies and their videos, everything. So the fact that these kids know how to perform, and not in a pejorative sense, is incredible. And the other thing that moved me to no end, listening to the comments, the speeches in Tallahassee that were coming out of Tallahassee yesterday, was that you had 16, 17, 18-year-olds who, again, have grown up in a world where everything is instantaneous. If I have a question, I can go to my phone and I can go on the internet and I can find out the answer in nanoseconds. But you had one speech maker after another saying, I know it's going to take time. I know it's not going to happen tomorrow. It might take a year. It might take 6 years. It might take 20 years. And one kid said in particular, but I know in my lifetime. We're talking about young people for whom their life is ahead of them. At a minimum, the kid who said that's got 50, 60 years. And so you put that all together, and you know, this generation, no offense to yours or yours, but this generation, if anything's going to happen, they're going to be the ones to do it. Now, President Trump told students, teachers, parents that he's listening to their ideas and has a proposal of his own. Armed specially trained teachers.
It's called concealed carry, where a teacher would have a concealed gun on them. They'd go for special training, and they would be there, and you would no longer have a gun-free zone. Gun-free zone to a maniac, because they're all cowards. A gun-free zone is let's go in and let's attack, because bullets aren't coming back at us. And if you do this, and a lot of people are talking about it, and it's certainly a point that we'll discuss.
Oh, we're going to discuss it, all right. Armed teachers.
It's great that he had this little note on him that reminded him to say, I hear you, and what he comes up with instead of that is let's arm teachers.
Yeah, well, it's insane on so many levels. I mean, first of all, you know, teachers aren't equipped to do that. We shouldn't expect that of teachers. And if one were to do that, how is a teacher with a gun going to be any kind of a counterweight to someone who's going to come in with body armor? The shooter in Colorado had body armor and an assault weapon. It's just, it's complete ridiculousness. And we shouldn't even talk about it.
I love but we must, because it's so ridiculous and because people are going to believe it. I also want to point out there's some things about Trump that have become totally predictable at this point, and here is one of them. He leverages, you know, well, a lot of people are talking about it when 0 people are talking about it. It's an idea that is terrible and that he's pulled completely out of the air, but he wants to make us think that he's been thinking about it. Nobody's talking about this because it's a stupid idea, frankly. But one of the things that I think this reveals, and that a lot of the discussion around what we should do about gun control reveals, is that we seem to want to talk around the point of what a gun is. Like, guns are for killing things, mostly people, occasionally animals. Like, you're equipping a teacher with a gun because now the job of a teacher is to be prepared to kill people who come into their classroom, to kill them. Like, doesn't that say that there's something wrong here? Like, just the idea that this is a total normal thing that happens now. Like, we need to be able to kill other people if we want to teach children the ABCs. Like,
we have a Facebook comment that ties in almost exactly to that. This is from Michael Nye, who says, it isn't a matter of just changing a few gun laws. We have a gun culture in much of America, and that's what needs to change. So does arming teachers help this culture? Well, no, it only perpetuates it. It's what is so interesting to me about the fallacy in one of the NRA's favorite lines of the only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, is that it assumes that there have to be all these bad guys who are able to get all these guns. Like, what if we just take the guns out of here? I mean, someone should devote some time to debunking every one of their little lines, because they're just riddled with these logical errors.
Right, and on that point, the good guy with the gun can take care of a bad guy with a gun. So, of course, my mind immediately goes to, okay, so what happens when the good guy with the gun is a black teacher and law enforcement comes in, and as we have seen over the last 5 years, it doesn't turn out so well for the black guy with the gun. And Christine, when we talked about this before we went on, you reminded me that we did have a good black guy with a gun
Who worked in a school.
Say his name and tell his story.
Philando Castile, a beloved school worker, beloved by students and teachers. He had a gun in his car. He told the police when they approached him that he was carrying, and he was shot and died in his car. So there's a good guy with a gun.
Right. As Molly was saying, so many holes in that. And also, I just want to point out that the idea of giving teachers guns, I thought, aren't these the same people who always complain that teachers are being given too much to do and they're meant to be social workers, and that's not what they're being made to be social workers and solve all these problems that if only they could be solved in the home, that they wouldn't have to deal with that? I mean,
honestly, they're not even willing to pay like teachers to buy crayons for their classrooms. Like teachers have to get tissues donated by parents, and now they're going to buy them all Glocks.
Some teachers in Oklahoma, some teachers are getting second jobs at Walmart, but no, they have time to train with their guns.
Yes, the guns that we're going to buy them as a government that's really generous to our public schools.
I don't think we should lose sight of how profoundly sad this is. When I think about Columbine, when it happened, it was really horrible, but there was this feeling then that it was just like this isolated event. It was just so horrific. It was just so horrible. And you didn't imagine it happening again. But now, we do imagine it happen again, and we train, you know, we drill our children. My daughter-in-law is a teacher, and you know what she did Friday night? She went to her classroom and emptied out her closet in case there was someplace that she needed to hide her students.
And I think kind of what you just said right there, you have a daughter, your daughter is a teacher, your daughter has a daughter. I think that's part of what's been so despicable and upsetting about what the NRA is doing now. Christine mentioned you can't vilify these children, so they're vilifying the media instead. They're saying the media doesn't care about these school children. They don't want to keep children safe. They want to make us all less free. You know, as if people want to be writing about these horrible things happening, and as if these people don't have children of their own. It's all very upsetting.
I mean, I swear, Earth 2 is encroaching on my sanity. Now, at a CNN town hall Tuesday, Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio drew ire for not supporting an outright ban on assault weapons. Watch.
Now, I think what you're asking about is the assault weapons ban.
Yes, sir.
So let me be honest with you about that one. If I believed that that law would have prevented this from happening, I would support it. But I want to explain to you why it would not.
Senator Rubio, my daughter, running down the hallway at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, was shot in the back with an assault weapon, the weapon of choice.
Yes, sir.
Okay? It is too easy to get. It is a weapon of war. The fact that you can't stand with everybody in this building and say that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Where's the courage on Capitol Hill in the face of rage?
Well, it's sort of madness, which is that, okay, there are loopholes, so we're not even going to bother to try to do it. I mean, there's no courage, there's no spine. There's got to be a way to be able to attack these weapons that have no place in American cities.
No, sorry, Christine.
Schools.
Right.
No, I mean, I would echo that. I think that we saw, especially that town hall, the lack of courage horrifyingly on display. I mean, this same parent, I think, called Marco Rubio to his face pathetically weak. And then after this question, one of the kids who had been in the school asked Rubio if he would be willing to turn down money from the NRA in the future. And Rubio's horrifying evasions on that question were so cringeworthy that I'm amazed that he's able to show his face in public today.
So you don't give him any credit for showing up, which he did, and the governor of Florida did not.
You know what? I do give him credit for showing up. I think it's notable that the president didn't, that Rick Scott did not show up, but he also, I think he showed up thinking that this was going to be easier than it was, frankly. He had all of these sort of platitudes and like, well, let me tell you what I have done, as though this was some sort of like pre-planned presidential debate, and that is not what's going on right now.
I agree with you on that. And the other thing, which I have to say, which really bothered me, is Senator Nelson. I just thought that his, trying to take shots at Scott, who's going to be, was just really opportunistic and also left a bad taste in my mouth.
Tone deaf.
Yes.
Using this as, I mean, he's a politician, so we shouldn't be surprised that he sees the opportunity. But there's a time and a place for something like that.
Right. Well, I think what Christine was saying about Rubio's evasions on the NRA giving him money are what makes me, despite feeling really optimistic about these kids, not want to be too Pollyanna-ish here, because the power differential is pretty great. And these kids they don't have the money to donate to these campaigns. They can work on raising it. One of them said to Rubio, what if I'm able to raise as much money as the NRA could give to you? But we'll see. And right now, they can't even vote. So it's upsetting to see how much power the NRA has compared to that.
Right. Many of them can't vote. But a lot of them, the juniors and the seniors, they are going to be voting.
Yes,
and just judging by their tone, they are not going to forget the evasions and the platitudes that they've been hearing in the last week. Do you think because of maybe how he got beat up in that clip that we showed and being pressed on will you take NRA money that, he told a gun control activist that he would support raising the age limit on buying rifles and limiting the size of the gun magazines? I mean, that was sort of like right there, midfield conversion. Sports reference.
Well, I mean, the fact that he was softening some of his stiff opposition is encouraging, but we have to see whether or not he's going to follow through or not. Let's not forget, after Las Vegas, everyone was on board to get rid of bump stocks, and until the NRA said, "Oh, we really didn't mean it. We don't really like that legislation." So let's not jump on that bandwagon again.
Rubio doesn't have the best track record on following through on controversial positions, so it would be nice. I also have a comment from Boop Singh, who says the NRA is giving an enormous amount of money to the Republicans. I think they gave $30 million to elect President Trump. We need to change the belief in the Second Amendment as to what it means now that we have a full military. So I think, goes back to the culture point and goes back to kind of looking into the future. Maybe we aren't going to see anything change right now, but maybe if we change the tone of the conversation in our lifetime or in these kids' lifetime, something will change if we're able to.
In talking about the power differential, when you were mentioning, Molly, the power differential between these kids and the NRA, my mind went to those kids 50 years ago during the Civil Rights Movement who sat at lunch counters, who marched in the streets of Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia, where the power differential was insane, the power differential. And yet, because of those kids, because of those children, we're able to sit on this set together. And so that's why I think I'm like so moved and excited by what I'm hearing from these kids, not just in Florida, but around the country. But let's change some gears here and talk about another big story that under normal circumstances would be the lead of this show, and that's the Russia investigation and Special Counsel Robert Mueller filing new charges against former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort and aide Rick Gates. But the charges were put under seal by the court. The new charges that we do know about are against 13 so-called Russian trolls working for Russia's Internet Research Agency. The indictment charged the 13 for allegedly trying to skew the U.S. electoral process. And let's not forget, what's his name? Alex Vanderswan, who pleaded guilty to lying to prosecutors in this whole matter. But that's a whole other thing down this rabbit hole that is the Russia investigation. I don't know. It seems to me that the indictment of these 13 Russians, it's a bit of message sending, but it also a message sending to Russia, but message sending to the Trump administration. It's like we're beyond sort of the collusion thing. We're looking at a mass conspiracy.
Right, yeah, we're zooming out a little, I think, from the matter of collusion and trying to establish the basic groundwork here, which is there was Russian meddling. This is leaving aside whether the Trump administration wittingly was involved in that. This is just saying, yes, there was meddling. You can't deny it anymore. Of course, Trump then turned around and went on Twitter and said, but General McMaster forgot to say that the meddling didn't do anything. But I mean, I think that's the messaging that's trying to go on here, is to say, everyone, all right, let's stop arguing over whether this happened. Here's my massive indictment. This happened.
Right. And let's talk about another tweet that the president sent out on Tuesday. Trump tweeted, question, if all of the Russian meddling took place during the Obama administration, right up to January 20th, why aren't they the subject of the investigation? Why didn't Obama do something about the meddling? Why aren't Dem crimes under investigation? Ask Jeff Sessions. Well, Former President Obama did try. Here he is in one of his final briefings as president.
In early September, when I saw President Putin in China, I felt that the most effective way to ensure that that didn't happen was to talk to him directly and tell him to cut it out, and there were going to be some serious consequences if he didn't. We did not see further tampering of the election process, but the leaks through WikiLeaks had already occurred.
I mean...
Well, you're not going to like this, Jonathan, but I think he has a little bit of a point. I think that the response... Trump. I do think that the Obama response was a little bit disappointing. Should have been more forceful. This is with the benefit of hindsight, but we should have done more. I think that there was this assumption that, oh, Clinton is going to win and we don't have to worry about it. Should there be an investigation? No, there should not be. But there was not the forceful kind of action that needed. Him telling him cut it out, okay, big deal.
That's his dad's speak.
Grumpy
You know, like behind closed doors, there were a couple of mofos and stuff like that. That's what I'm.
Well, it was not very effective then.
Well, no, because we're talking about Russia. But here's the Joanne. Now you know I love you to pieces.
Okay.
You're my favorite person.
Oh,
but you're wrong. Look, here's the thing that people forget. And of course, I've now forgotten it. the point I was going to make. Oh, the Obama administration went up to the Hill. I believe it was Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson went to the Hill before the election to the congressional leadership and said, "This is what's happening. We need to send a message out there. Would you please sign on to a statement publicly that this is happening and we're going to do everything in our power to stop Russia?" And what did Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell say?
You're exactly
no.
Right. You're exactly right. Shame on him. But rather than keeping quiet, they should have come out blasting, with their criticism.
All I'll say is I'll take Obama's actions, as few as they were, to the complete inaction that we're getting from the Trump administration.
And this is like this is a problem, and actually I think Trump was totally successful maybe in sending that tweet, because now we're talking about what President Obama did, as though Obama is still president, as though anything that he is doing or did matters right now. What matters right now is figuring out what these Russians did and how to keep them from doing that in our next election cycle, and talking about whether our president is involved or what he should be doing going forward. Not asking Jeff Sessions questions or talking about what about Obama as if that matters. That is not the point anymore.
Right.
And we're just completely distracted.
And the other thing, in that tweet from the president, he says there was a thing about up until January 20th. There it is. All of this meddling took place during the Obama administration right up to January 20th, as if it ended on the 20th, when we had the intelligence professionals on the Hill last week saying, y'all, this is still going on. And that 2018, they're gunning for 2018. So what the hell is he doing?
Well, Christina is completely right about that, and that is really troubling and upsetting. And you're also right that the focus should also be put on Congress. Shouldn't Congress now be telling the president, okay, we have adopted these sanctions, you have to do something? Shouldn't they be applying pressure rather than what they always do when it comes to the president, roll over and take it?
Right. I mean, they should be on the side of a milk carton, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, Molly?
I was going to say, first of all, I have no idea what Ask Jeff Sessions means
here.
What does that mean? Actually supposed to ask Jeff Sessions? What are we going to ask him, and what is he going to say? Second of all, I think the other interesting issue here, a little more outside of the realm of what should politicians be doing, is I think this really did tell us a bit more about what was going on Facebook, and that Facebook was kind of the primary site of this, and how the Russian bots went and carried out their campaign. And I think it has been fascinating to see, we were just talking about Parkland, how they're trying to do the same thing there. Immediately after this shooting happened, they were doing some posts that were very Islamophobic, and were, pictures of the shooter and then Allahu Akbar written next to it. But they were doing other posts that looked kind of pro-gun control, and what they were trying to do there, it didn't seem super partisan. It seemed just we're stirring up discord in any way that we can.
Yeah, and it just makes me wonder, have we been revealed, we, meaning the American people, to be a bunch of dupes?
Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yes. I think that's honestly the saddest and most sobering part about this whole investigation is that looking at the indictment, looking at the ads that they placed and what they tried to do and what they thought would be effective, and apparently was pretty effective in disrupting our election cycle, is that they identified all of these sort of seams that are unraveling, that are already pulled tight in America, and picked at them. But the thing is, the problems were already there. This partisanship, this disagreement, this inability to talk to somebody who isn't like you, this extreme willingness to be a dupe, to believe whatever someone tells you as long as it aligns with your preconceived notions. Like, that's what's happening in America. The Russians just used it against us, but we were already there. And that's scary going forward for our next elections and for our democracy in general.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if you haven't already seen it, go on the Google, type in CNN reporter, Trump supporter, Florida. Oh. And the CNN reporter went and talked to one of the Trump supporters who organized one of those troll-inspired rallies, and she's having none of it. None of it.
Crazy.
So do that. Go to the Google. In the meantime, we are out of time, but not out of opinions. So keep up with us at WashingtonPost.com/opinions. And remember, if we're sitting here and totally exasperated, it's only Thursday.